Hey, welcome back everyone. Today I want to show you this mystery Ethiopian Mauser Gewehr98 that I acquired from Royal Tiger Imports. If you've been following the channel already, then you might have seen some of my unboxing and reviews of this particular rifle. But I want to go into a little bit more detail on this. Royal Tiger Imports, or Inner Ordnance, is the company that brought back all those military surplus weapons from Ethiopia and Africa earlier this year and the tail end of 2019. Some obviously in better condition than others. So these were mostly an accumulation of French, German, and Italian rifles that converged the continent and Ethiopia after a century of military conflicts, really. And this is pretty common of that era. After large wars, countries usually dump their stockpiles of arms, mostly small arms, onto other countries, colonies, vassal states, or whoever's looking to buy, really. And while most of these are generic milsurp configuration rifles, there's something interesting about this rifle that I acquired from them, and I wanted to go into a little bit more detail about that. Now, the Gewehr98 was the standard service rifle of the German military during the First World War, and is distinctly noticeable by this roller coaster rear sight, roller coaster shaped rear sight. And to summarize furthermore, it is a bolt action rifle, obviously, that weighs about 9 pounds and has an internal box magazine right here that holds 5 8mm Mauser cartridges that are fed into the gun via a stripper clip. And it was designed by Paul Mauser in 1895, but introduced into German military service in 1898, which is where it gets its namesake, obviously, and is basically the granddaddy of many other military Mauser 98 rifles. This includes variants of the rifle that were adopted by the Spanish, the Ottoman Empire. Many of them went to South America and so on. So Mauser rifles are pretty world-renowned. Now, there's a lot of technical information out there about these rifles on YouTube, the internet, books, but I did want to bring attention to a few modifications or alterations that accompanied this rifle from its journey in Ethiopia, originally as a German military rifle in World War I to ending up in an Ethiopian warehouse in the 21st century. So this really isn't a Gewehr98 in the true sense, and even though to the naked eye it appears to be one, I'll show you what I mean close up. I want to first draw attention to the fact that the receiver and the barrel are not from the same type of rifle. As you can see here, the receiver has a faint Danzig Arsenal crest with the year 1911 underneath of it. And on the side here of the receiver, it's denoted by the words Kar98. Well, the barrel is at the Gewehr98 length of 29 inches. Gewehr98 receiver would be denoted by a Gewehr98 in the same place as the Kar98 is here. So the Kar98, or the Carabiner model 98AZ, was the World War I version or carbine version of the Gewehr98, chambered in the same round, and was manufactured from 1908 to 1918. This shorter version would have been used by cavalry units, mountain troops, and special support units where a long rifle wouldn't really be practical in the field. We also notice here that the trigger guard is from a Kar98AZ as well. We know this because a Gewehr98 trigger guard would have a hole right here for the sling swivel to go through. This rifle lacks that because the Kar98 with its shorter length would have the sling attached through an insert in the buttstock. So adding the extra sling hole in the trigger guard wouldn't really make any sense, and I'll revisit why this is important in a second. So it appears that the receiver and the trigger guard is from a Kar98 and the barrel is a Gewehr98 barrel. Seems like the receiver and the barrel are interchangeable, and at some point they were assembled together like this. Now this is where I want to draw attention again to the receiver and explain how it could even fit into a Gewehr98 stock. Remember, this is a Gewehr98 barrel and a Kar98AZ receiver. So basically, Mauser rifles have either large ring or small ring actions. The receiver ring is this front part of the action here where the barrel shank is threaded and where the barrel will screw into it. Now, the diameter size of the receiver will either be small or large. A small ring action will be one that is the same diameter across. So this is a small ring action. As you can see here, if I move the bolt out, this whole piece is going to be the same diameter across, right? There's no protrusions or anything else. It's going to be flush in terms of its length across. A small ring, like we said, is going to be the same diameter across the entire receiver, while a large ring action is one that will have a swell or an enlargement at the front of the action. So in a large ring receiver, you'll see the front of the action swell or enlarged. Okay, and so here are two good examples of a small ring and a large ring Mauser. So on the bottom here we have an 1895 Chilean Mauser. On the top here we have a German K98K from World War II. The Chilean Mauser 1895 on the bottom here has a small ring Mauser, or a small ring receiver. As you can see here, it is all one size, one diameter across, small ring. And on the top here on the K98K, you have a large ring Mauser, and you can see how it's thick and bigger here, and then it gets small here. Give you a side view, give you a little bit of a better idea side by side. So it's all just one diameter, one length across, and then of course here it's a little bit thicker, and then the diameter gets smaller as you progress along the action. So these are really two good examples of a large ring and a small ring Mauser. Now, taking a look again at the Gewehr98, it has a small ring receiver. As you can see here, it's pretty obvious because the diameter is the same at all lengths across, but there is a problem here. The Gewehr98 was a large ring Mauser. Well, we said before, this is a Kar98az action, which were small ring receivers. So how did they fit this smaller action into a wider Gewehr98 stock, which is made to fit large ring actions? Well, I'm not sure of the answer entirely, but in order for this in order for this combination to work out, these stock had to be refurbished or custom made like this, and by someone who knew what they were doing. As you can see, if this was a large ring receiver, it would take up more space along the stock, but obviously when they were creating this combination of a Kar98az receiver and a Gewehr98 barrel, they had to custom make some sort of stock that, well, basically where there was extra wood here to accommodate for the small ring receiver. Unlike the Great War era stocks, this stock has no impression from a unit disc. Normally on a Gewehr98 on this side, there would be a unit signifier here, which was just common in the Gewehr98s, and the rear sling swivel is different from the original. So we'll take a look at the bottom here. So on military issue Gewehr98s during the First World War, this would be a quick detach style, and right now, whenever they refurbished the stock, it had a sling loop, just a generic sling loop. And then the buttstock is not any different. It's just flat plate like Gewehr98s would have. So, and then of course, even though this is a Kar98az receiver, it does have a Gewehr98 straight bolt action on it, or bolt on it, of course. You know, all these factors, the custom stock work, the swivel swing, the missing unit disc, the trigger guard, and the receiver differences indicate that this particular rifle was purposefully assembled like this with some actual decent attention to detail. So why did this gun come together like this? Well, because it had recently been imported from Africa, we know it wasn't just some person in the US who had, you know, tinkered with it as a post-market rifle at a gun shop. You know, doing some very surface level research on post-World War I weapons, a lot of German guns were sent to Belgium after World War I as reparations, since Germany didn't really have money. So, you know, physical armaments were really the next best thing. And this includes Gewehr98s, Kar98azs, and probably a massive assortment of other small arms. So many were then likely reassembled post-war in major gunsmithing centers in Belgium like Liège. Now, I have seen a number of Gewehr98s from this Africa shipment from inner ordnance that came from Ethiopia that do have Belgian proof marks where the K98az receivers were matched with original Gewehr98 barrels and were purpose-made and stocks of this exact configuration. Post-war Belgium was rampant with gunsmiths who were working on small contracts, putting together rifles to make money. But this rifle lacks any sort of Belgian markings. So as far as I can tell, I cannot claim that this is from a Belgian workhouse, that it's of Belgian origin or a Belgian refurbished gun after the war period. But another theory that this was refurbished directly after World War I as part of a reparations deal to arm the new Weimar Republic in Germany. However, because the Versailles Treaty put a cap on the number of small arms Germany could have in its military, basically all Mauser rifles that were pushed into the service of the Weimar Republic had to have a 1920 stamp put on the top of the receiver. This obviously lacks that. And also, Gewehr98s or Kar98s that were refurbished in the Weimar period also had flat tangent sights, and this obviously still retains the roller coaster, the imperial roller coaster design. So I highly doubt this came from the Weimar period, especially with all the parts kind of jumbled together. I don't think they would have done that. So I doubt that theory. It's not a Spanish Civil War gun because the crest would have been scrubbed from that. This obviously still exists, and it doesn't have the MP8 Spanish cartouche in the stock. Other Gewehr98 parts after the First World War were purchased by Czechoslovakia and were reassembled into weapons, but those were marked on the receiver too as Czechoslovakian rifles. This obviously lacks that. Now, the most plausible theory, which shouldn't be hard to guess, I think, is that it's an Ethiopian reworked gun. After the First World War, the international arms market was flooded with tons of weapons and parts from Germany being shipped to Turkey, Spain, China, Ethiopia, and elsewhere. A cobbled together rebuild of a small ring receiver with a large ring barrel is typical of the post-war era in all of these places, and Ethiopia was quickly modernizing and beefing up its military, and Ethiopia ended up with a ton of different weapons from different nations and in different calibers and configurations. So in a period where Africa was going through a lot of geopolitical changes, and in the interwar period, Ethiopia was one of the few African countries that had not been colonized or had become part of a larger European sphere of influence. They were always under constant threat of colonization. They were invaded by Italy in the 1930s, so having weapons that they could quickly have access to is very important for their national survival. And I can't explain why this doesn't have Ethiopian markings on it. While other guns in the period did have Ethiopian markings, there are several Gewehr98s that came out of this recent Africa import that did have the Line of Judah on the top. They do have Ethiopian markings. So I cannot explain why this one doesn't have it, but everything here shows that this was refurbished somewhere after the war. And I can't be certain, but something like this, if it works and can be put into service in times of emergency, then, it's good to go as a working rifle. So, wherever this gun came from, it's a parts rifle, right? Whether it was refurbished in Belgium after the war, whether it was an Ethiopian reworked rifle, this doesn't affect the function of it, like I was just saying. It just means that you won't have much collector's value in it. But if you have, boxes of loose parts, and it doesn't really matter if they're matching, if they have matching numbers or not, if they can be refurbished and shipped off as a functioning rifle, then you're better off with someone that doesn't have a rifle at all. So what do we call this thing? It's simply a Kar98az receiver built in a Gewehr98 configuration. By whom or why it was done like this, I don't know, but it's certainly a Ethiopian mystery gun, mystery Mauser, something like that. And just want to document this and show you some of the weapons that are coming out of this interordinance shipment from Africa. All right, thanks again, everyone. I hope you enjoyed watching this. If you do have any information about this gun, or you've seen similar Gewehr98s come out of this interordinance shipment, let me know. But don't forget to subscribe, and I hope you enjoy your new year.